It's that word we're all sick of hearing, lockdown.
You must stay at home.
No socialising, no adventures, and fishing under multiple restrictions. But rather than moan about it, we're bringing you this series to keep you going through these troublesome times. I'm Blair, and these are the Lockdown Lives. When the first lockdown hit, I undertook daily Instagram live streams, but once they were done, 24 hours later, they were gone forever. I was inundated with messages from people who had missed them, they had questions to ask, and they wanted to hear them again. So whether you've got questions about bait, want to hear me rant about what's right or wrong with fishing, FAQs, fishing in the upper layers, and plenty more, I hope this series will help answer some of your questions and potentially give you a little fishing fix during the most frustrating of times. These are the Lockdown Lives.
Hello again everyone, hope we're good. It's definitely getting towards spring now. Hopefully restrictions are going to be lifted further soon. Kids can go back to school, we can go night fishing again. I can't wait for that. And yeah, the daffs are going to be popping up, the bluebells will be popping up in the woods. And yeah, good times are just around the corner, I'm certain of it. Anyway, another episode of Lockdown Lives. This time, a bit of a strange one, bit all over the place as well, but I thought it was important. And that is safety in angling. Now, when you think about going fishing, I know I do, what could possibly go wrong? At the end of the day, we're sitting there, we're chilling, we've got the rods out, but there are a number of factors that we should be conscious of. Now, if you've watched any of my videos or follow me on social media, you're probably thinking, what the hell are you doing talking about safety in angling? And I will hold my hands up and proclaim I'm probably not the best person to be doing this. So I suppose I'm doing this as much for me as I am for you guys watching, because it is something that we should be conscious of. Before we get into the nitty gritty and stuff, let's talk about carp safety first, because at the end of the day, we go fishing to catch these beautiful carp and we do really need to take care of them. So we talk carp specifically first. So we've got our fish, it's in the net. It's very difficult for me to show you this now without actually being, by the water and with a carp, but once we've got that carp in the net, it's probably most important that we just take a minute, have a breather ourselves and get things ready and prepared. By that I mean make sure your mat's prepared, if you're going to take a picture, possibly have the tripod all set up. Get some water in a bucket or a bottle or this little device here, a refresh water bucket. So make sure you've got plenty of water to hand. And then, if you can, I would try to unhook the carp in the water. So you simply take the hook and the way it went in, using your finger and thumb, nice tight grip around the shank, try and pop that hook back out, making minimal damage possible. Fish is now unhooked. If you can't unhook it for whatever reason, then possibly bite your main line, cut your main line, just leaving the rig and the leader and stuff in the net with the fish. What you don't want to be doing is transferring the fish from the water with the hook still in its mouth, attached to potentially a rod, putting tension on it and creating mouth damage and stuff. So there's a couple of options for you. It's now in the net. I'm going to make sure that it's in the center of the net. I'm going to collapse the arms of the net and just double check that all its pectoral fins, these are the fins at the side of its body, they're folded flush with its body and stuff. And then I'm going to roll a little bit of the net up. If it's a small fish, and I wouldn't want to put a sort of size on it, but let's say up to 15, 20 pounds, I'd probably roll the net right up and then carefully with two hands, making sure I've got a firm footing, lift that fish out of the water and take it to the mat. Maybe if it's a larger fish and I'm going to need some assistance to get it out of the water, I'm going to transfer it into a retainer sling and I can just slip that in the water, make sure the zip gut sits wide open and pop that underneath the fish and then transfer the net in there, and it's just a little bit easier to carry these and stuff and more supporting. I take the fish over to the mat, gently set it down, don't drop it down, gently set it down, give it another bit of water and stuff, unroll the landing net, and I can now look at my amazing prize. I'm going to carefully remove either the retainer sling or the net mesh just by sliding the fish outwards and carefully teasing it out underneath, a little bit more water, and then I can, really examine the fish, look at it. Is there any potential damage? If there is, we do a product called Medicarp, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm talking here about scale lift, potentially a little bit of mouth damage, but we'll come back to that in a minute. And then, yeah, I can get a nice picture. The most important thing, guys, when you do get them out of the water, you just keep it to the minimal amount of time possible. Get your picture, get it back in the water nice and safely. Like I say, it's very difficult to go through that without actually having a physical carp and a lake to show you. Talking about unhooking mats more specifically, there's definitely some mat police out there, we'll call them, that proclaim potentially some mats are safer than others and stuff. There's a number of different options available. I think this was a revolutionary design that Kev created and designed and invented many years ago now, probably 8 or 9 years ago. This is a Carp Cradle. It's a design that elevates the fish up off the ground, so you've got a big sort of carcass in here that you can rest the fish on. And the concept that Kev had in his head was thinking about the boxers. You know, you can get a boxer who goes for a number of years boxing with gloves on and stuff, but can still get brain damage. And Kev's kind of thought process was, if you've got a carp on the mat, even if it's, you know, thick foam and stuff, and it's bang, bang, bang in there, how good is that for the vital organs and the brain and stuff of that carp? And he wanted to completely elevate the fish off the ground. So when it was sort of flapping and stuff, it'd be flapping on nothing really, just air. It's a great design in that you can get your legs right underneath it, which makes it very, very easy to lift the fish and stuff. And they really took off. You know, I can think of hundreds of venues, not just around the UK, but around Europe, that insist you use a cradle type design. However, there's always people with some form of negativity, and people did suggest that due to the fact that it was a metal frame, what if you drop the fish on the metal bars? Of course, it could happen. The mats now all feature sort of a full foam surround and stuff. So that's one possible option. From there, we went on to the Air Cradles, which was, again, a big advancement. So this was completely taking away any metal whatsoever. It's a 3-chamber design. Again, the top bit here, you've got this sort of canopy that the fish can sit on. It can bang there as much as it wants, but it comes into no contact with the ground whatsoever. A lot more compact than the metal Carp Cradles. And also really, really useful when you want to try and get water shots and stuff. And then you've got the more sort of conventional flat mat. It's what I use more often than not. This is the scope flat mat. We do it in 2 sizes. It's nice and compact, plenty of foam. It's got the sort of cover, should you need to cover the fish up from bright sunshine or just to grab something quickly. And yeah, this is what I use more often than not. It's just important, guys, that when you are carp fishing, for whatever size of carp you're fishing for, that you do use some kind of an unhooking mat. But there were many, many years, decades in fact, when kind of unhooking mats didn't exist. An angler would catch a fish, and I've been there, you know, in my early years. You'd catch a carp, you'd get it out, you'd look around you for the softest bit of grass, you set it down and unhook it and stuff, and those carp went back in the water fine, and they continued to grow and live and flourish, and were caught many, many times afterwards. And I can think of some real iconic photos where people have got, you know, fish just on grass, and those fish went on to become monsters and be caught many more times. So I'm not saying let's all just use grass from now on. It is really important that we do take as much care as we can of the carp and stuff and use a suitable and appropriate unhooking mat. Water shots. You know, it's become quite common practice, certainly in some of the sort of French fisheries, some of the commercial fisheries, that when a fish is of a certain size, you know, you can't get your picture on the land anymore. You've got to have a shot in the water and stuff. You can get it out to unhook it and stuff in an unhooking mat, and then it's got to be transferred back to the water. And this is quite an interesting concept. I actually fished a venue last year, Chambouf, incredible fishery out in France. And they applied this rule. Basically, anything over 30 pounds in size had to be photographed in the water. And I, of course, respected that. It can be quite challenging, especially if the fish is lively and stuff, and you do run the risk of losing it before you manage to get a really nice photo. But using things like the Air Cradle, something you can set it back into, or a floating retainer system where you can drop it back in there, I didn't actually have any issues, and I managed to get some beautiful shots of the fish I caught. But what I found interesting, and there's a kind of reoccurring theme here throughout all of this, is anything over 30 pounds had to be photographed in the water, but anything under 30 pounds, you could do it on the bank. And I've got a photo here of one of the smallest fish I caught, I can't remember, 36 or 37 pounds. And because of its weight, I had a water shot. And then I've got another photo here of a fish that was 29.14 that I took onto the land and photographed on the land. And it's a little bit hypocritical almost. What, if you're 29.15, that's fine, you can have your photo taken on the bank. But if you're 30 pounds 1 ounces, you've got to have your photo taken in the water. Yeah, I find that quite interesting. If a fishery owner or an angler like me really cared, surely you'd photograph absolutely everything in the water, or vice versa. As I said, there's a recurring theme here, but we'll come to that. Catch pics, that's why we go, or it's one of the big reasons why we go. We've talked in a previous episode about why would we go fishing, what do we love about fishing, and I think a fundamental reason is we do want to get a decent picture at the end of it so we can show our family and show our friends and you know, have a memory there. But, you know, it does cause issues from time to time. I think the biggest one for me is the brace shots. I get quite a bit of criticism for having 2 fish on a mat at once. More often than that's because I've just had a double take and I'm going to quickly get a photo of them together. And I often get people comment, you know, the fish that I'll sort of lay one on the mat and then I'll hold the other one. People are concerned about the carp that's laying on the mat on its belly because apparently, again, a lot of this is apparently, it can damage vital organs. Now, the last thing I want to do is damage any vital organs, but at the same time, I really do want a nice picture of these 2 fish I've caught together. So I continue to do them. And the bit that I feel contradicts itself is a little bit is, if I put a carp in here, yeah, on its belly, for example, and then I put it onto the scales and I weigh it on the thing, surely again, the weight of the fish is just resting on its belly and stuff, but no one ever seems to criticise that fact that when we weigh fish, potentially they're on their bellies and stuff. Again, more often than not, there's quite a lot of contradiction. Got another shot here. I went out just before Christmas with the boys from Topography. Big ups Elliot, big ups Dave. Had a fantastic session with them and it really kicked off. Went on the canal, caught 10 fish in quite a short space of time and had multiple fish, you know, multiple takes even. And at one point I had 4 small commons and we got them out for a picture together. I had the lads with me. I felt very safe in myself that I got good support should anything go wrong and quickly got a picture. You know, to me, I really didn't feel that any harm had been done. And then in more recent times again, I'd say the last year or 2, there's been a bit of a trend towards, I've never done it myself, but I probably will one day get a nice shot like this. It's the sort of kneeling on one knee, resting the carp's head here, supporting the back end of the fish here, and then lifting the dorsal up. And it is a beautiful photo, and there's been a huge amount of controversy and criticism over doing something like this. What if the fish flips? You know, you've only got one hand on it. The fish could flip at any point, you know, using a flat mat, using a cradle, using any mat. It can happen. And yeah, there's been many instances where I've seen hundreds of comments about how irresponsible an angler is doing such a thing. I remember once on the official Nash Tackle Instagram page, we posted a photo of Bastel, mega common. Now, he wasn't actually doing it on the land, he was in the water, again, kneeling on one knee, he's got the carp here, he's supporting it, and then he's got the dorsal up. And in the end, we took the image down because it was just creating so much grief. I got a double sort of water shot when I was out in Germany a few years ago with Mark Vusen, boys from Carpzilla and Ollie, filming Eurobanks, and I had 2 commons, 2 20-pound commons, caught pretty much simultaneously, got a really nice water shot of them together. If anything had happened, a bit like with Bastel's photo, if anything had have happened, the fish would have dropped straight back into the water. But again, a few people commented, you know, that's bad practice, Alan, you're setting a bad example. You know, if you look at the image, I'm more concerned about the pectoral fin. You know, I haven't actually tucked it in behind it. But then when I look at that image, I think, but that's how Ollie, you know, holds fish. If you ever look at Ollie holding a carp, the back pectoral fin's always sticking out, which I don't do it like that. I make sure it's flush to the body. Ollie's caught thousands of carp, thousands, and had photos of them all, let them swim away again, and they've been re-caught, you know, many, many times again. I think it's all about being as safe as we possibly can and minimising any risks. Just got to look after them. And I think these people out there that, whether you call them keyboard warriors or trolls or whatever, that want to sort of stick the knife in or ruin someone's moment of sharing their capture with everyone on social media. Yeah, it's not particularly nice. We'll call them the Mat Police or whatever for now. Those same people, I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say they are anglers. They'll quite happily sit there and tell me I shouldn't be doing brace shots, or you shouldn't hold a fish like that, or that's incorrect practice. But at the end of the day, guys, like, let's be frank about it. We've gone fishing, hunting, yeah, with very, very sharp hooks, with big, strong rods. We've tricked the carp into eating our bait, yeah. We've hooked them, braided them, pulled them, dragged them in, got them, and then for our own glory, removed them from their beautiful watery environment so we can selfishly get a picture, a trophy shot. You know, there's so much hypocrisy in it all that if you genuinely cared, you know, if you really, really cared about these fish, you'd never fish for them in the first place. So I think, I'll say again, as anglers, we've just got to do the best possible job we can to really treasure and look after our prize. It leads on to an interesting topic, and that is Germany. You know, and I don't think this rule here just applies to Germany. I think Switzerland falls into this category and possibly other countries. And that is that in Germany, if you catch a carp, you must kill it. Now, I've got a photo here of a mega fish I caught in the company of Vusen, big ups Vusen, fish over 20 kilos. And yeah, by law, the fish had to be killed. Because that is the German law, you know. In Germany, you have to not just go and buy a fishing license, you have to go and train to be a fisherman. You have to go on a course, you have to pass an exam, and part of that course, or a big part of that in fact, is teaching German fishermen how to kill their capture, how to kill them humanely, quickly. And yeah, it's a really interesting law. And I've thought a lot about it over the years. Like, it goes back many, many decades where the German government, the German authorities, they decided they would put a law in place that no animal should ever be tortured. Now, to their eyes, fishing is torture, if it's for pleasure. If it's to eat the fish, then it doesn't matter, that's absolutely fine. You can go and hunt a deer, you can go and hunt a pheasant, you can go and hunt a carp, as long as you kill it at the end. And it really made me think, you know, but where, again, there's this sort of controversy is in Germany, for example, they still allow horse racing. Now, in my eyes, I'm not into horses, I've never even been to a horse race, but I can only imagine a horse is trained to get to a certain level. It then has someone put on the back of the horse, the jockey, and then they're in a big log line and it's he who wins the race, you know. But in order to win that race, that horse has to be, I don't want to use the word beaten, but it's whipped, you know. It's go faster, go faster. It's for our pleasure to watch that, maybe to gamble or whatever. So yeah, it's for our pleasure. And that's acceptable in Germany, but to me, that's torturing an animal, surely, you know, by making that horse run as fast as it possibly can and beat the other horses. That's not natural and stuff. So again, one rule for one rule for the other. But yeah, that is the German law. If you go carp fishing and you catch a carp, it must be killed. It cannot be released because otherwise you are torturing an animal. Back onto the carp care stuff. Like I said, this is going to jump all over the place. Sacking fish. It's got a real stigma around it. A lot of people, a lot of fisheries, you know, they ban the use of sacks. Now, I'm not for one saying that we should be sacking fish up for hours and hours and hours and stuff, you know. There's a time and a place for it. If I catch a fish in the early hours and I know it's going to be light not long after, absolutely, I'll put a fish into a sack. And I actually think the sacks, this is one of our sacks here, they fold up really nicely into their own pocket and stuff. I actually think these are so much safer than the retainer slings. You can put your fish inside there, you can lower it down gently into the water. They come supplied with these little H blocks. You can unravel a length of that and leave that floating on the surface just in case there's an issue, maybe a rat, and it does happen, I know French fisheries where it happens. At the other end on the tether cord, maybe a rat chews through it or something, so rather than losing the sack, you've always got this identification point floating on the surface. The materials used is incredibly porous and the water can easily go through it, and most importantly the fish can breathe. Their gills can still open and close and stuff. The sacks are very, very dark in coloration, And when you put a fish into a sack, you take it out into some deep water. Make sure there's not loads of weed around because that's sucking the oxygen out of the water and stuff. The carp pretty much go to sleep. They calm right down and they just chill there and stuff. Then in the morning you can gently retrieve the sack nice and slowly and then carefully lift the fish out to get your picture. As opposed to the retainer slings, which I think are much more commonly used for retaining fish, I think these are actually worse. They're not as dark, the fish has got more movement and room to move inside, and I think they get a lot more stressed out in it. I've used them myself and I've had a few bad instances, you know, where the edge of their pecs, their tail and stuff, it's gone a bit white where they've just thrashed in it. Maybe they've rubbed up the underside of their belly and stuff on shallow gravel. They're great for retaining fish for short periods of time, but I certainly wouldn't be happy leaving a fish in there for an hour even, and certainly not any longer than that. Whereas a sack, in the right conditions, as long as it's not too hot, I happily leave a fish in one of those for 4 or 5, 6 hours, with the complete peace of mind that the carp's absolutely safe and no harm can come to it. Medicarp. So we've got our fish out, we've talked about that. It's got a wound, maybe it's spawned recently, it's got some scale lift, who knows. There are options to treat it and stuff. It comes supplied in a little pouch, and inside the pouch you've got a bottle of the Medicarp, which is a special blend that we actually make on site and stuff, featuring a product called Barbless. And inside that little pouch you've got a drying cloth, and you've also got some of these applicator buds here. I'm going to try and give you a demonstration of how it actually works. Luckily I've got a few sort of scratches and cuts on my hand, but if I just take a little bit of this, add it onto the applicator, like so, I can then put it onto the areas that are sore and stuff. That could be potentially a hook hold, it could be a scale lift, it could be a little tear, it could be a broken fin or anything. So if I dab a little bit on there, you have to imagine I'm a carp. And then you take a little bit of water and just splash it over it. If you look what happens, it actually solidifies and creates a protective plaster on there. That fish can now swim off, that's sealed over, that's going to stop any more infection and stuff there. And it's pretty incredible stuff. It's like magic, you know, like people say, that's magic. This stuff here is like magic. And I've seen many examples over the years where a fish has got a wound, it's had some of this Medicarp applied to it, and it's healed up incredibly well. Probably the greatest story, and there's a bolt onto this, was if you've watched Eurobanks 4, I think, I should know, but anyway, we went to Sweden, Ollie and I. It was a dream destination for both of us, and it didn't disappoint. We've gone out there and we went to this very special place called Haga. Big ups Gary and Jonas. Anyway, we've got to Haga, we've had 2 nights, 1 night, can't remember, a short amount of time, and we've been very lucky to catch some beautiful fish. Anyway, this photo here is one of the carp I caught. Now it doesn't look too bad in this because I've shown the good side, but basically I caught this carp. This wasn't my doing, this is sort of an old incident. Someone at some point has also hooked this fish. I can only presume the fish has got snagged. It is a very snaggy lake, there's lots of trees and sort of forests and stuff submerged and that. Anyway, angler must have got cut off, left the fish trailing the rig, line, rig, leader, whatever it is, has got caught around the snags, and the fish has just pulled and pulled and pulled on the hook. And it's cut into the side of its face, right down its cheek, all the way, you know, a good sort of 8 centimetres like that, cut all the way in. Plus it had some real bad sort of open wounds on its body and stuff. This particular photo of me, the only wound you can see is down by its tail flank. Anyway, Ollie and I, no problem with the main body wounds, got this out and we treated it. But we looked at its face, which was like literally hanging off. Now the owner of the fishery was there, Jonas, and I don't think any of us knew really what to do. Now, we could have just let the fish swim off with a bit of Medicarp, but it would have ended up with this massive sort of Chelsea Smile-esque kind of face and that. So instead, we thought quickly on our feet, and I had with me a little needle that I'd use for kind of delicate maggot rigs, you know, threading maggot onto to floss and stuff. And I said to Ollie, shall we try and stitch its face back up? Now, he'd never done it before, I'd never done it before. We asked the fishery owner what he thought, and he was like, I don't know, you know. So we did it, we took a punt on it. And I ended up threading some 10-pound zig flow through one of these little needles, and Ollie got the fish and applied a lot of pressure onto it, kept it really, really still on the mat. And I proceeded to sew, with the 10-pound bullet, its face all the way back up together, all the way up. And we looked at it, we give it one last dose of Medicarp and thought, it's the best we can do. And we let that fish swam off very strongly, and just wished it, you know, the best of luck in the future. About 2 years later, I love this story, Steve Briggs went out there with Joan and also fished the same venue. And he only went and caught the same fish, and it had healed up completely. So there's a couple of photos here of the two different sides. You can see the side is the same as where I was holding it. That sort of white wound down by the flank of its tail, completely healed up, absolutely perfect. Again, that's all down to the Medicarp. And the other side, where its face has been ripped, yes, its mouth's not that perfect forward protruding mouth and stuff anymore, but you can literally see like where we had stitched, and it is completely healed up again. The mono had obviously rotten over that period of time. The Medicarp had helped to heal everything back up. And it was a real feel-good day whenever Steve sent me those photos. You know, it made Ollie and I feel like, yes, we're anglers, yes, we do go hunting them and pursuing them and catching them and stuff, but every once in a while you do something pretty special. Moving on to other safety elements within angling. A big one is transmitting of disease. It's something I have to be really conscious of because I do travel around a lot, moving from venue to venue. Koi herpes is bad. There's a few others as well out there. They can wipe an entire, you know, fishery out. And when you're talking about any carp, they don't even have to be big. You know, they're precious fish, not only to the fishery owner but to us as anglers. And the last thing we want is a fishery being wiped out by disease. So for me, it's really important. I always got plenty of nets with me. If I'm on a bit of a road trip or adventure, I'll always have 3 or 4 nets in the motor. Plenty of different sacks, plenty of different retainer slings, a couple of different unhooking mats, and I will be basically flipping them. You know, when I go to a venue, from the previous venue, they'll be left on the motor to dry, hopefully in a bit of sun. When I get home at the end of the session, I'll make sure they're well dried out, and basically trying to keep everything as dry as possible and stop that sort of transmission of disease. Some fisheries, or a lot of fisheries now, offer sort of dip tanks and stuff. Again, really, really important. They've got antibacterial solution in there that really helps sort of get any potential disease off. And many fisheries nowadays offer a service where they provide their own carp care. You know, we do it here at the church lake and stuff. We tell people, don't bother bringing any nets, retainers, sacks and stuff. Just use what we've got to put on site. Speaking specifically about fishing, safety in fishing, you know, I'm not going to go into should leaders be banned, should we only use tubing. If I had a fishery, the only rule would be, and it would just be one, look after my fish, please. That would be my only rule. You know, I wouldn't start banning certain things because I think a lot of the things that get banned, it's not down to the product's fault. You know, if you take Klingon leader or lead core, for example, I don't think this is damaging to fish, no more so than fishing on the main line. In fact, I think venues that say leaders are banned but allow you to fish directly on the main line are actually worse, you know, because you're more likely to ping a scale off with 12-pound mono than you are with a thick bit of leader. But like I say, I'm not going to get into that now. Talking about fishing though, as an angler and being safe, you know, you'll often hear people say, oh, that was a bit naughty, you know, you're fishing a bit too close to the snags and stuff. I'll always evaluate the situation, and my simple thought process is, if I fish there, if there's carp there and I fish there, am I going to land them safely? If I'm not going to land them, there's no point in hooking them. What's the point in hooking a fish and then getting cut off or losing them? So I'll always kind of look at the situation and weigh up the options. Can I land a fish from that situation? So yes, I will snag fish, but I'll just make sure that my clutch is done up really, really tight, you know, just literally fishing for a beep, single bleep, fish on. I'll be on my rods, I'm not leaving them unattended. And if I do get a fish going to a snag, which let's be honest, it happens, it can go into a dense weed bed or into some snags and stuff. My only rule, and this is quite a personal thing, I won't pull for a break, or I'll absolutely endeavour not to. I'll hold the rod. We talked about this when I was discussing fishing in weed in a previous episode. I'll try and hold the rod, maintain a little bit of pressure, hopefully feel the fish kick and try and ease it back out there or walk it back out. If I feel though the fish has done me, because they can do it and they do it very successfully, shed the hook, spat the hook out, and the fish and the rig is now in a snag and stuff, again, I don't really want to pull for a break, leaving loads of line out there. If I can get out to that rig, maybe go around to the other side, or potentially get in a boat, or wade across, or even swim across, then I will, as long as I'm safe, you know, and I'm weighing up the situation. I don't want to leave a rig out there. I can think of many instances over the years where a fish has got snagged and I've gone well above and beyond, you know, to recover that fish safely. There's a photo of here with me with a carp and a young lad and his grandmother, and we met these when we were out filming Eurobanks. I hadn't turned my alarm on and didn't realise I'd had a take. It's an accident, you know, it wasn't anyone's fault, so to speak, only mine really for not turning that alarm on. But, you know, these things happen from time to time. The fish had decided to go up a margin, like quite some way up a margin, not out in open water, but through the canopy and forest and stuff. By the time I got to the rod, I looked at it, it was just there fishing in the margin, the tip's bent round and the line's going this way, and I noticed that a substantial amount of line had come off my reel, let's say 60 metres, 60, 70 metres. And I looked at Ollie and said, like, what are we going to do? And we both knew the answer. We're going to go and get that fish back, or at the very least, we're going to recover our rig. I ended up swimming under and over and under and through with the rod, nipped one, pearl one, through all the branches, and went all the way up this margin. And I eventually got there and caught this beautiful carp, you know, and no harm was done. If I'd have just pulled for a break or cut the line or whatever, there is a chance that, you know, that fish could have been tethered in there and potentially been in a similar scenario to the one I mentioned at Haga that had ripped its mouth. Here's a photo, this one makes me chuckle, a more recent photo, back end of last year I think. I fished a real cool river, ended up hooking a fish, but it kind of immediately done me in a snag. Again, rather than pulling for a break, I just waded very safely across this particular river, managed to get in the snag, nipped one, pearl one, cut the line and recovered the fish and managed to get it back. If you do have to pull for a break, if you are stuck in something and you need to pull, my advice would be try and get like an angle on it. So maybe put a pole in and try and pull it round the pole. Don't pull it directly back at you. And if you really have to, turn your back on it. I also think it's much better, rather than pulling on the rod, take the line itself and wrap it around your hand and pull it that way. Don't pull on the rod itself. Just be careful, guys, because if one of them leads comes shooting back at you, you know, I've put a photo in here now. I still to this day can't believe it's real, but it's an X-ray where someone has done just that. They've pulled for a break. They're using a kind of tournament-style long-range lead. They've pulled for a break, and the whole thing's gone through them and down in through their rib cage. It gives me the shivers just looking at it. So yeah, just be careful. I touched a second ago on wading. If you're going to go out there and wade, whether that be to place a rig, look for a spot, recover a fish that's been snagged, whatever it is, just be careful. Make sure, if you're not confident, you've got some kind of wading stick, something like a prodding stick to feel the ground in front of you as you go. And if you're getting really close to the edge of your waders, that's it, enough's enough. Don't take the risk of going any further. Probably the most scariest example for me was I was fishing on the River Wye once. It was a very, very difficult day, bright sunshine, desperately want to catch some barbel, but conditions weren't favourable. But I kept looking downstream at this one particular raft. You know, there was a load of trees in the water. It created a big slack and that, and I felt that there was a good chance of a bite down there. But the only way to get it was to wade across the River Wye. It is a spate river. It wasn't in flood or anything, but I kind of underestimated its power. And I remember going out in the river, in the waders. My dad was just upstream, but I remember going out in the waders and getting moved like downriver where the current was just so strong and stuff. And in the end, I had to turn back. And that was probably the most scary experience. You know, you shouldn't mess with water. It's powerful stuff. And let's be frank, it does take lives each year. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to wade, probably best making sure that you've got someone on the bank watching you, and don't push it to the absolute limits, and use a stick if necessary. Going out in a boat in waders, again, this causes a lot of issues and stuff, especially in some of our films. The biggest, victim's the wrong word, but the person who does it more often than not is Samir and Claire, big love guys, phenomenal big water European anglers, and you will often see them in boats, in waders. people have got this massive issue. Oh my God, they shouldn't be in boats in waders. I actually rung Samir this morning and said, bro, can you do me a favour and send me a photo of you, in a wader in boats? He said, no, yeah, I can now, but I'll do one better for you. He's currently living in Spain and he's got a swimming pool. He said, I'm going to go and put loads of clothes on, winter clothes, put the waders on, and I'll run and jump in and send you a photo. So there's also a photo of that here now. He knew it was going to be safe because the boys at KWI, big ups Pilar, big ups Hoffman, they made a video about 3 years ago now. They hired a swimming pool, they went to the swimming pool with a number of different waders and they jumped into the swimming pool, and in every instance, whether the water got inside or didn't get inside, they had absolutely no issues wearing waders and stuff, and the water coming over the top. And Samir completely proved it to me this morning. He literally ran and jumped straight into a swimming pool and no issues whatsoever. The whole boat thing, we'll come back to it at the end, but again, going out on any bit of water, whether that be in a boat or in a waders, just be conscious. It can be potentially very dangerous. Swimming is something I've done more and more of over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. That's swimming out, looking for spots, diving down, placing a rig on the bottom. But again, it's dangerous. It could be that the venue's very, very weedy, and you kind of get a bit tangled up in that. I've had a couple of experiences where I've been swimming in lakes and that. It has been dense weed and I felt a little bit unsure of myself, just getting caught up in weed and stuff. And just be careful, and of course water temperature as well. You might think that the water's not too cold, but once it gets into your blood and stuff, it can start slowing things down, shutting things down, and worst case scenario, things like pneumonia, hypothermia and stuff. So be very, very careful. Getting hooked, again, we don't really associate fishing with having all these possible safety issues, but they do. Getting hooked is definitely one of them. I've been fishing for over 30 years now, and touch wood, I can safely say I've only stuck a hook in myself 4 times, but that's still 4 times. All 4 times, no real issues. I've always manned up and just pulled it back out again. I think my best ever hooking story wasn't actually me. It was Nashy. Not long after I joined, I watched him tie a combi knot rig where he joined some amnesia to some armour braid, and then went to pull the hair down, pulled it and impaled a size 6 Fang X straight into the bottom of his lip. There was blood all dripping down his chin, and he asked myself and another employee, get the fucking thing out of my mouth. And I literally was sitting there tugging on his lip, and I had to yank this hook out. So yeah, it does happen. At the end of the day, if we're using a hook, Doctor, if we're sharpening a hook, if we're just using them straight out of the packet, they're incredibly sharp. 2 of the instances where I've hooked myself have been like this. I've had a big lead, bigger than this, but I'm not saying that you wouldn't do it with a little 2-ounce lead, on my lap like this, and I'm tying a rig or whatever, and I've moved my leg like that. The lead's fallen off and it's just sunk the hook into my thing, well past the barb. And the only other time I've done it was twice in a night. I was out at Teliats. I had a big heavy lead on top of a bivvy. The lead fell off and again got me in the arm. And just a few hours later, I was dealing with a fish with Kev on the unhooking mat. The hook had kind of come through, got caught in the net mesh, then it got caught in me. And yeah, I managed to hook myself, the net mesh, and the hook was still going through. It was a disaster, guys. Cut the hook link and took myself off for a walk into the woods and manned up and pulled it out. Kev showed me the way. If it does go in, I'm not going to do it now just to show you, but if you do hook yourself and it's a barbed hook, basically I put a lot of pressure either side of it. It's very difficult to do this on your own, but just pop it out, I'm not telling you how to do it, but this is what I do. I just man up and just get it back out. And I remember one of the times hearing that as it was popping back through, I don't know, veins, tendons, whatever. Touch wood, those 4 times, and if it happens to me again in the future, I had no further issues. Probably an even worse incident was back in the summer a few years ago. Every year we do a lot of junior fishings with local kids and stuff. We basically go and teach them how to fish. And primarily it's with 3-metre whips, how to use a float, a disgorger, shot the float, and just catch some little fish. This one particular day, Mike Wilson went down, and he wanted to catch these kids some carp, so he's got his floater rod out. We've got a very strict rule at these junior fishing days, and that's barbless hooks only, in case, and it can happen, someone does get hooked. Mike didn't, he was using a floater claw hook in barbed, and he's got a bolt machine on, and he's gone round behind to cast, and as he's done this, he's caught a young girl in the arm, so you can imagine that, the force of a cast, and he's hooked her. Luckily we had Ian, big ups Ian, a paramedic on site, which we always do at these junior events, and he managed to calm child parents down, and we managed to safely remove the hook. I think the most horrific story I've ever heard about anyone hooking himself was Bastel. Bastel hooked himself in the finger. You can see the photo here. It's just kind of in a little bit of his finger like this. He didn't think it looked that bad. The hook was fresh out of the packet, but of course it hadn't been sanitised. He tried pulling it out, but he was a bit too much of a girl. He couldn't just pop it back out, so he decided to go to hospital. They removed it, but they told him, you know, we'd like to see you the following day. He thought, that's a bit weird, the hook's out now, what's there to worry about? Anyway, that night he ended up taking a lot of painkillers because it really started to hurt. He went back to hospital the next day and his finger was like almost double the size. From there, the doctor said, like, we're not happy with this, you need to go now to a different hospital to see a surgeon, a specialist. Bastel actually refused. He was like, nah, like, it's fine, like, it's only a hook in my finger, and instead took a course of antibiotics. 3 days later, no change. In fact, everything was a lot worse, and his whole finger was now bright red as the infection was starting to spread through his finger into his hand. He then did have to go and have surgery. He had 3 incisions to clean the tendons in his finger. He then spent 3 days in hospital and multiple checks over the following 3 to 4 months. His finger and hand looked awful, his skin kept falling off, the whole wound wouldn't heal up and stuff, and every day he was having to keep it clean and stuff. It actually took him 6 months to get full feeling back in his finger again, and even to this day, how long ago was this? Probably about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, even to this day, he still says that finger feels funny. So as much as I can sit here and go, yeah, it's fine, just pop it out and that, I've actually not done it since then, but I think if I did, I probably would go and get it checked out just in case there's any infection in there. What about baiting tools? Now this is one I haven't done. Have any of you ever sat on a boilie needle? I couldn't think of anything worse, man. I carry all mine in this little Box Logic needle box, and all our needles are now really, really bright colours. We've got orange, blue, white, pinks. So hopefully if you do drop one on a sleep system or you do drop one on the grass, you're not going to sit down and get poked by it. But touch wood, that's one I haven't done. If you have done, I hope it weren't too painful, guys. A real serious one, Wells disease. Wells disease is a bacterial infection that we can contract if we come into contact with the urine and blood of rodents and stuff. Now, a lot of the venues I fish, park lakes, inner city environments, even day tickets and stuff, there does tend to be a lot of rats everywhere. So if they sort of wee in the water and stuff, we are potentially at risk from Wells disease. And not just rats, maybe cows, livestock, potentially even dogs that are going to drink from that water and weeing close by and stuff. Basically, we can get it from getting into contact with contaminated water. The symptoms start off just feeling like flu. You might have a headache, a few chills and stuff. However, if they start getting bad, it could mean that the Wells disease is getting to vital organs, things like your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, possibly the heart or even the brain. Doesn't sound good, does it? If it gets to some of these organs, it is bad, guys, like really, really bad. You're gonna be in intensive care. Worst case scenario, people do die from it, you know, so something that we should really, really take seriously. And as fishermen, we are at high risk, you know. I often thought in the first lockdown that, oh, coronavirus, you know, is it really that bad? I'll wear a mask, I'll socially distance. And it made me think about coronavirus and fishing, you know, which am I at more risk at? Am I at more risk of catching coronavirus, or every time I go fishing, am I more at risk of potentially catching Wells disease? It did make me think. How could we prevent getting Wells disease? You know, don't go into the water in bare feet. Certainly don't go into the water with bare feet if you've got an open cut. Any open cuts or wounds and stuff on your hands. If you're letting a fish go, you know, not good. Eating after we've touched the water, you know, we should really give our hands a wash with a disinfectant wipe or something. Leaving mugs just laying around on the bank. There's no reason why a rat couldn't come at the night and have a little lick around the top of that. All those kind of things, you know. Luckily, on average, only around 40 people a year do, you know, get Wells disease. So it's not high risk, but as anglers, it is something we should be conscious of. This one really freaks me out. Ticks. Anyone ever had a tick on them? Touch wood, I haven't, but these little horrible creatures here are a part of the arachnid family, so they're spiders. They're usually around 3 to 5 mil in length. They're an external parasite that feeds by attaching itself to a host and then drawing the blood from it. And that host can be humans. A tick loves somewhere warm and moist. So really good places on us as humans are like under our armpits, down here in this area. Oh, it makes me cringe just thinking about it. But yeah, they can get onto us. What makes a tick very, very serious is it could potentially be carrying Lyme's disease. And I think Martin Bowler's got Lyme's disease. Big love, Martin. And that again is from coming into contact with ticks. I know loads of people that have had them that have had no issues whatsoever. They've just removed them. This is probably worth carrying in your tackle box, guys. This is a tick remover to get a tick out. You don't just want to pull it out, because if you leave the head in there, that's when it becomes really, really infected. And basically, when you go fishing, at the end of each session, if you've been anywhere with lots of long grass, if you've been anywhere with livestock, deer, cows, I put a photo up here now of me feeding a deer like bread from my mouth, you know, for all I know, there was ticks all over it. Even dogs, you know, we have them in the house for the Labradors and stuff because they regularly get them and that. Just be careful, guys, and do check yourself when you get home, especially in those likely haunts where they might be hiding. If you do get Lyme's disease, just like Wells disease, it's not good, guys. It's not good. You're going to hospital, you know, and worst case scenario, there is the possibility of dying from it. Like I said, people think we just go fishing, it's all like nice, but there are things that we should be conscious of. Tree climbing, I'm petrified of heights personally, but as I said in episode 2, watercraft location, if you can get a vantage point, if you can get a bit higher with those glasses on, it makes it so much easier to see fish. Scott Lloyd, big up Scott, he's a big one for getting up those trees far, far higher than I'll ever dream of climbing, but he does it because he's a top angler and he knows the higher he can get, the more he can see of the water and stuff, so it is a massive edge, that vantage point. But you've got to be careful, and I know Scott always says it, he always promotes the fact, you know, he gets up these trees and he watches these fish, but he always says to people, be careful, you know, check the branches are nice and strong and potentially have someone down at the bottom, you know, keeping an eye on you and stuff. As I mentioned, I'm personally petrified of heights. I think my most scariest fishing experience was with Matt, with Tom Foreman, with Rob. We once went wrasse fishing down in Cornwall, which I was really excited to do. But to get down onto this particular mark, we had to literally abseil down this cliff and stuff. And I eventually got to the bottom of it. It scared the life out of me, I'm not going to lie. I had one of the best days fishing I've ever had, catching these massive wrasse off the rocks and stuff. I weren't scared on the rocks with all the waves smashing up. I was just that climb down. And I managed to get back up, which I hated as well. And I vowed I'd never, ever, ever, even though the fishing was incredible, go to that spot and fish again because it was just too much for me. Storms, you know, I'm sure you're all aware. If you take carbon and you put it too near an electric pylon or a bolt of lightning and stuff, you run the risk of becoming electrocuted. You know, on the underside of all our rods, we put these stickers on, you know, warning people, do not fish underneath pylons, do not fish in storms and stuff. If a big storm comes in, it's probably best to reel your rods in and wait for it to pass, and definitely don't go out there playing fish in a storm and stuff. Again, talking of storms, things like the Titan has actually saved people's lives over the years just because of its strong, rigid frame. You know, full trees have fallen on it and stuff and not really hurt or potentially even killed the people that were sleeping underneath it. Talking weather in general, excessive rain and flooding, don't get caught out, guys. Check the weather. If you're fishing a river or you're fishing anywhere that's sort of stream or river fred, you need to monitor that water coming in, because I've been caught out a couple of times I've been flooded in. One particular time on an island, you know, it was an absolute nightmare. Another time a lake where the river burst its banks and flowed over into the lake I was fishing. There's a shot here that was taken, again, Eurobanks 4, I think, out in Czech Republic, fishing an amazing river, actually set up on an island. And it did start raining a lot, you know, and it probably wasn't the safest decision. It was the best decision from a fishing point of view because it allowed me to fish a particular slack bit of water I wouldn't have if I wasn't there, but you know, the river was rising and stuff. Say again, look at the situation, weigh up the options, make sure you've got someone with you and try and be as safe as possible. The sun, It's one I've kind of ignored a lot over the years. I've had a couple of family members who have managed to get skin cancer. It's not to be messed with, man. I've always been of the belief that, nah, don't need suntan lotion. You know, it'll scare the fish off. It will taint my baits and stuff because of the smell of it. But for the last couple of years, I've been wearing it a lot, you know. And also making sure I'm covered up. You know, as much as I want a bit of sun, I need a bit of sun. You know, I don't want to be sitting out in it for hours and hours on end, certainly not protected anyway. This is how Ollie and I come up with the 2-second rule, because Eurobank's free. I think we'd gone to Italy. I basically was, yay, son, yay. Spent all day running around, fishing park lakes and stuff. And Ollie was like, you need to put suntan cream on. Nah, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. Anyway, I burnt really, really badly. And I had a little moan about it. He told me I could moan for 12 seconds, and after that I didn't want to hear another word about it because it was completely self-inflicted, and that's where we've got this rule now. If we want to have a moan about saying it's 12 seconds or 12 seconds only. So, yeah, all weathers, guys, be careful, whether that's rain, whether that's big winds, for example, whether that's the cold, you know, that's another one. We've got to make sure we look after ourselves in the cold. Double layers on the sleep system, plenty of warm clothing. It's all about layering up, starting off with second skins, t-shirts, building those layers up, always making sure you've got a decent waterproof outer layer. These are the ZT Mac waterproof jacket and trousers. And if it's really, really cold, you know, freezing cold, I'll wear this reverse hybrid jacket and things like these Caribou Parker trousers, heavily insulated, 2 or even 3 pairs of socks, a thin cotton pair, and then some, you know, wool socks, and then some real thick socks afterwards. I literally live in these wellies. They're neoprene lined, keep my feet really, really warm in the winter. Basically, if you get cold when you're fishing, it'll ruin a session. You know, you won't be able to sit it out for the day and stuff. So yeah, just be conscious of the weather, full stop. Eating well, you know, it's not something that you might associate with me, but I try and eat as healthy as possible because you need to, you know, plenty of water. You probably only ever really see me drinking coffee and stuff, but on the bank, I try not to live off, you know, pizzas and kebabs and stuff. I do like a decent meal, contrary to what you might believe. I love cooking good food. You know, I've been doing a number of sessions with Dan Yeomans last year, and we've been eating bass and fillet steak and lamb shanks and really dining nice. I think it's a nice end to a day, you know, when you cook some decent food and stuff. Yeah, look after yourself, you know, make sure that you're fit and healthy. Urban banks, it's a common question for me. Do you feel safe, Alan? You know, are you safe when you're out there doing it? Yes, I do. I do genuinely feel safe. I've got a few little rules though. That is, I'll always try and go with someone. I won't just go into the middle of Manchester or London on my own. I'd always go with someone, and I always try and do just the one night. If you're going to get robbed, I think it's likely to happen on the second night once someone's clocked you, maybe formulated a plan. So I always try and just do one night at the venue. I actually broke that rule last year or possibly the year before. I've done quite a lot of fishing over in Austria, in Vienna specifically, in the city, with Bastille, with Nick, with Dom and with Flo. Been with Flo loads of times. This one particular weekend, we did a night on a particular park lake, no issues whatsoever. Went to do a shop day, went back to that park lake the second night and had my rod stolen. Woke up in the morning, they were like 7-8 metres away from me. I'd actually covered them up in leaves and stuff. We were sort of tucked behind a bush, and yeah, woke up in the morning, everything had gone. Never heard a thing. Just be careful, guys. I think my 2 scariest experiences were, again, both with Ollie. One time was in Paris. Took us about 3 hours driving around Paris to find somewhere safe to set up. That was really, really shady. And another time with Ollie out in Italy, in Rome, where, again, neither Ollie and I felt safe and ended up leaving. Basically, lots of people turned up. We had lots of camera equipment, lots of fishing equipment. We just didn't feel safe, so we just packed up and left and ended up going, you know, somewhere where we did feel safe. But what is safe? You know, at the end of the day, I could leave here tonight and go home. I could have a car crash. You know, the old saying, you could walk out your front door and get hit by a bus. And I remember, it's a good few years ago now, a few instances up at Linear. People were getting held up at knife point for all their fishing tackle. So if you can't go to somewhere as incredible and prestigious as Linear Fisheries and know you're safe, you know, when can you? Like I say, you've just got to minimise any potential risk and stuff. Talking about Eurobanks with Ollie and stuff, driving, had a bit of criticism for that over the years where people have said, you know, you're not being safe, you're driving too long and stuff. We share the driving, that's really important. For sure, Ollie does a lot more than I do. He's a pro driver, he's just really, really good at it. But there are many instances when I'll just say, oh, I can't do any more. Can we swap? And we'd swap. We do stop and take regular breaks, even if that's just half an hour to grab a coffee and stuff. We're not fueling ourselves on Red Bull and stuff. We might play on it a little bit, but I'll only have a Red Bull, for example, when I really need one. Otherwise, they don't work effectively. I think my biggest top tip, when I'm really tired and I'm driving, this is a bit of a guilty pleasure as well, I'll stop at the services, I'll go in and I'll just put £3 or £4 in a fruit machine. And there's something about all those bright lights and the fact that I need to concentrate, otherwise I'm not going to win any money. I literally woke up again. So that's my little top tip for being safe when you're driving. Finishing up, guys, you know, I've, like I said, jumped all over the place. The biggest one that I probably get the most criticism over is this here, the life jacket. And the reason I often get criticised is because sometimes I will go out in a boat and I won't have one on. I rely on this thing heavily to save my life. That's what it is, it's a life jacket. So I put it on when I feel I need my life saving. In the winter, for example, where if I fall in wearing loads of clothes, I'm gonna get cold quickly, I'm not gonna have the strength to swim and stuff, I need that life jacket. If there's big winds on the water, just look at the situation and go, should I be putting a life jacket on now? Am I potentially going to need to save my life if I fall overboard? That's when I put one on. But in the heat of summer, 25 degrees, 30 degrees, you know, I'm in shorts or whatever, am I really going to put a life jacket? I've just been swimming 10 minutes ago, you know. And you look around you on these kind of venues, there's children swimming, there's people using kayaks, there's people paddle boarding. None of them are wearing life jackets. But as anglers, as carp anglers, we get criticised an awful lot. Yeah, it's disgusting, what a bad example, you're not wearing a life jacket. It's there for a reason, it's there when I need it to save my life. And I know I'm never gonna know when that time will be and stuff, but again, you're just weighing up the options. I often look at canal boat people. You know, people live on these canal boats, they're fully clothed all the time. You never see one wearing a life jacket. What's the difference? You know, they say you can drown in just a few inches of water. But yeah, we as anglers just seem to come under a lot of criticism for wearing a life jacket. As I said, guys, time and a place, you know. I wear one a lot, but there are instances when I don't. And that kind of rounds it up, really. I think we should go fishing. We shouldn't be wrapped up in cotton wool, so to speak. We should care for the fish, look after the fish safely, use safe rigs, be sure we can land the fish, or at least stand the best chance of landing those fish. I suppose you could look at it all like everything we do as anglers, we should kind of risk assess the situation. Now, I'm not into HR and health and safety and risk assessments. It's really not my thing, but I think I do it subconsciously. I think I turn up at the venue, I look at the situation. Is it safe to fish there? No. Okay, I won't. Is it safe to... Yeah, I reckon I can land a fish from there. Is my rig safe? Have I checked my knots? Yes, I have. Okay, right, great, let's do... Do I need to wade out? Oh, I'm not sure about wading. It's very, very silty. Am I going to use a boat? What's the weather conditions like? Well, it's flat, calm. It's a mill pond, you know. I've just been swimming an hour ago. Everyone else is, okay, I'm not going to wear... Just look at every situation that you end up in and ascertain how safe it is. Is anyone else there? Just be safe, guys. Like I say, I feel a little bit of a hypocrite doing this, but I feel it's as important as it is for you as it is for me to talk about these kind of subjects, because we all want to live a long life, we all want to catch many, many special fish and be as safe as possible doing it. That's all for this episode. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the upper layers, something I'm really passionate about. It's going to be zigs, it's going to be floater fishing, and it's going to be my favourite method of all, stalking those carp. Big love, guys. Be safe. Catch you in the next episode.